Hello YouTubers, I've decided that I'm going to do my final thoughts video. The reason is I haven't been able to do the underwater tests that I wanted to do, and I'm not sure when I'm actually going to be able to do them. So what I've decided is I'll put the final thoughts video in first, because I think there's a sufficient amount of test videos that I've done which should help you guys to make your decision, and which has also helped me to come to a conclusion about the ZX5. So I'll go through the good stuff and the bad stuff, and then hopefully at the end of it I'll sort of give you some kind of a conclusion to what I think about the ZX5. Okie dokie, here's the good stuff. It remembers the settings. The mic gain and the video resolution it remembers, but as far as the water correction is concerned, it does reset that to off, which I think is quite a handy thing, because you're not going to want the water correction on all the time. The macro on it is really good, and the autofocus on it is really good. I really do like that, especially as far as the underwater is concerned. I'll sort of explain that a bit more in a minute. It remembers the file name, so you don't have to rename every single file when you put it onto your computer, which is really handy. The zoom on the ZX5 is a lot better than the ZX3. You don't have any issues as far as low light is concerned, and it doesn't have that sort of funny jump when you sort of zoom in and out in low light, which is really groovy. The underwater, I think, is far better on the ZX5 than it is on the ZX3. And the fact you've got the autofocus and the macro mode on the ZX5 really does make a difference, and the colouring as far as the underwater is concerned is really, really good. So I really prefer it over the ZX3. The recording time is really good. You get about 2.5 hours worth of recording time out of it, and it takes about 2 hours, 2.5 hours to charge, which I think is pretty good, to be honest. I mean, it gives you like nearly an hour and a half more than what the ZX3 does, so that's a real bonus. But obviously some of you guys have an issue with the internal battery, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. The colour effects are good. Also, you've got video editing on there, and you've got the share button. I'll talk about the share button in a minute. But I think they are nice little features to have. The colour effects I do like. I did like it on the Play Touch, and I do like the fact that they've added it on the ZX5. The low light I thought was a lot better on the ZX5 than the ZX3 and the Panasonic TA1, especially in the 60 frames. The 60 frames per second normally on the other cameras that I've got is quite dark, but on this it was really good, and the quality was better as well. The ZX3 tends to be a little bit grainy in low light, but this seemed to do a better job. The image stabilization seemed to be pretty good, and the video quality was really good. And when I hooked it up to my HD TV, I thought the video quality was really clear and crisp. I'm not sure what they're talking about on Amazon, because some people have been saying that it's got bad video quality. Why they're saying that I don't know, because from what I've seen it is just as good as the Play Touch, if not better. You can record while it's plugged into the mains, which is really helpful, and one of the big things that made me like this over this is because of the green pixels that you get in low light on this. I've had it on pretty much all of the ZX3s that I've owned, and it is a little bit annoying because it ends up in the final video that you put on your computer, and it does put me off. I did notice it on this when I was doing the low light videos that I did, but this doesn't have that problem, so that is a huge bonus for me as far as the ZX5 is concerned. Okay, so now we have the bad stuff. These are things that you guys have noticed, and also a few things that I've noticed. First up is the autofocus. Now, as good as it is, it does blur sometimes, and I have noticed that sometimes you have this sort of jumpiness in this kind of situation where the autofocus is trying to readjust to what's behind me. The Sony Blog ECM5 had it really bad, and the Panasonic TA1 had it a little bit worse. It's not that bad, and it seems to be only in low light that I notice it, but it is there. Also, as far as the autofocus is concerned and the macro, I did have some trouble trying to focus in on a leaf, which was a little bit annoying, but when I put it into the macro and zoomed in a bit, that did help it, but it did seem to take a little bit longer to refocus itself. Next up are the little bronze flashes. Now, when I was using it in bright sunlight, if I pan the camera past the sun, there were these sort of gold or bronze flashes that came up on the screen. Now, I would assume that that's some kind of lens flare of some sort. I did try to recreate that and I didn't get it every time, which I was a bit confused at. So sometimes it flashes, sometimes it don't. Whether that's an issue for you guys or not, I don't know. It's not really an issue for me. Now, the big one, the audio. First up, the background noise on the underwater video capture. Now, what I decided to do was look at my videos of the ZX3 to see if the ZX3 has the same background noise as the ZX5. Now, what I'm talking about is when you have it underwater, there's this sort of funny crackly noise, sort of an electrical type sound noise in the background. Now, when I check the footage, the ZX3 actually does it as well. It doesn't do it all the time, but it does do it. So the ZX3 has the same issue as the ZX5, which sort of reassured me a bit, to be honest. I hadn't really noticed it that much on the ZX3, and it was only when you guys said about it on the ZX5 that I actually noticed it. So, because normally what I do as far as the underwater is concerned is I normally put some music over the background so that you can't hear the audio, only because if I knock it on the floor of wherever I'm taking it underwater, then that makes a huge amount of noise. So normally I block out the background noise. So the fact that they've both got that issue does sort of reassure me a little bit. Now, lastly is the audio in general. What I decided to do is get all of my cameras together, which is 6 in total, and I took some footage of each one. And as far as the Play Touch and the ZI8 was concerned, I didn't use an external mic. The lineup that I came up with was the ZI8 had the best audio, followed by the ZX3, followed by the ZX5, followed by the Panasonic TA1, followed by the Play Touch, and then followed by the Toshiba S30. Now, the only reason why the Play Touch was so low is because there was a little bit of background noise and the audio wasn't as loud as the rest of them, but they were all put on default. Now, obviously with the Play Touch, the minute you put a external mic in it and put the volume up, that sorts out the problem, so it's not really a problem. But as far as I was concerned, this was in the top 3, and to be honest, I would say that it's only a treble issue. If they put a little bit of bass in there and turn the audio down, then I think that would sort it out. Because that sort of brings me on to my next thing. What I did was I turned the mic gain down by 2 increments, and then I put some mid and bass in there, and that seemed to make the audio a lot better. But then, having said that, the distance test that I did, the audio seemed fine in that. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the audio isn't an issue. I know that it is for you guys, but I don't think it is. And I definitely don't think that it's something that would stop me from buying this. So, that's the good, the bad and the ugly. If there was anything I could change about this, what would it be? Well, for starters, I would put a fixed focus option on this camera. Just so that if you wanted to do a sort of vlogging type situation, then you wouldn't have to worry about it jumping if it did jump, and that the focus would be fixed like the Play Touch is now, so that you wouldn't have to worry about it trying to refocus. Not that that's a huge issue, but if it did, then that would sort that out. Also, like I've said before, I would change this share button to be a macro button. And what it would do is it would be in fixed focus mode all the time. Press it once to put it into autofocus, press it again to put it into macro mode. That's what I would do, because I don't really use the share options on either of my cameras, and to be honest with you, if they did want to put the share option in there, they could have done what they did with the Play Touch and just put it in the settings option, you know, put it in the settings so you can just go in there and do it in the settings rather than put a button. Because I think if you're underwater and you want to use the macro mode, you've got to try and get into the settings to be able to do it, whereas if you could just press the button to turn it on and off, then that would be a lot better. So that's what I would change. Now, as far as issues as you guys are concerned, obviously there's the audio, and it seems to me the other biggie is the internal battery. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the internal battery hasn't been an issue for me, and also the audio hasn't been an issue for me. If they're the things that are stopping you from buying this camera, then I would say don't let it stop you anymore. Just go and try it, because I did have my reservations about this camera. Having been a ZX3 owner for at least a year, I thought, well, how are they going to top this? And the reports that I was hearing about it, I just thought, I'm not going to bother. But then when I actually got my hands on it, it just changes your mind completely, because the quality of it and just the look of it and everything about it, you just completely change your mind. And I think that this camera is a lot better than this. So I would say if you can get the Best Buy or get to your local electronics store and you can get your hands on one and try one out, then I would say do it, because you will not be sorry that you have. Now, I know you guys you've been asking me about which one to buy and which is the best one to buy. I think if you don't have a ZX3, then I would say go for the ZX5 instead. The ZX3 is being phased out. It will soon not be available, and the ZX5 will be the only one available. So I would say go for the ZX5. There's bound to be a firmware update at some point, and the audio issue can be worked around. I don't think it is an issue, but obviously you guys have your issues about it. As far as you guys who have the ZX3, is it a worthy upgrade? Well, like in all of these things, it all depends on what you're going to use the camera for. If you feel that you want better video quality, better low light, a macro and better underwater, then I would say get the ZX5. If you're happy with the ZX3 and you don't really want to spend the money, then fair enough. At the end of the day, I'm doing all of this to help you guys out, and all I'm trying to do is sort of relay how much I like this camera. But what I don't want to do is to sort of almost twist your arm to get one, because if I do that and you go out and buy it and think it's a load of rubbish, then it's basically not good of me to do that, is it? So, at the end of the day, I do all of these videos to help you guys out to make informed decisions about your next camera purchase. To wrap it all up, as far as I'm concerned, whether you've got the ZX3 or not, the ZX5 is a good camera to have, and I would quite nicely sell my ZX3 to get a ZX5, because that's how much I like it. If you feel the same, then go for it, So there you go. That's my final thoughts. I hope it's helped. As far as I'm concerned, the ZX5 is a good upgrade and it's well worth getting. And I think when you get it, you will realise that yourself. But, don't take my word for it. Have a look at other reviews. Have a look at the video tests. And if you have any questions, please ask me, and I will try and answer them as best I can. Alright, that's enough from me. Hope you're having a good day, and I shall do some more later on. Bye bye for now.